So, a very, very, very warm welcome to this episode of Hypnogeeks, the Hypnogeeks podcast. And this week, I have got a really, really exciting guest for you. Welcome back if you've listened before. We are exploring the fascinating world of consciousness, healing, and the many layers of the human experience. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Amanda Joy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and I'm the Director of Studies at the Northern College of Clinical Hypnotherapy. And if you have listened before, I'm sure you're aware that this year the Northern College of Clinical Hypnotherapy launched our new sparkly, shiny, fantastic, dynamic spiritual hypnotherapy diploma, which covers a huge range of dimensions of therapeutic work, hypnotherapy work, hypnosis work from a more metaphysical perspective. And one of the areas which we focus on in this training is, of course, past life regression and past life therapy. And today I am truly excited to have a really, really magical guest, because for me, I've obviously had past life therapy and I found myself really deeply immersed in the exploration of what we're going to talk about today, the shadow self, and these hidden aspects, I guess, of my being that held joy and happiness and peace and love and excitement and pain as well, and as well as potential. I in my experience of working in regression, I've noticed this almost like a tug of war between light and darkness as I've navigated through my memories and my experiences and the emotions that I experienced in those sessions. Often a lot of emotion that I have tried to express, suppress, and hide and not express. And sometimes when we're visiting these experiences, that the darkness can feel really overwhelming. It can be, when we're visiting these experiences, it can be a place where our real raw insecurities lie, where our past traumas are hidden, and this can cause us to feel like we want to run away or hide from it. But over the past 10 years of my personal healing journey, I've realised that it's in this darkness that this darkness seems to serve a greater purpose. I often, excuse my language, but I often say when you're in a dark space and you feel like you're in a hole in the ground and you're covered in shit, that's the best place for you to grow. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, but it's in these shadowy corners of my soul, certainly, that I found seeds of creativity, seeds of growth. I've really connected with who I am, my purpose, my calling. So I've learned that this darkness is not something to fear, but it offers us an invitation. It gives us an invite to explore something deeper. It helps us to face our fears, to embrace hidden emotions, to confront barriers that perhaps I have put in place, and this journey into the shadow self for me has been a liberation from pain. It's been a liberation from this feeling of being haunted by experiences and emotions, and it's really brought me personally, it's brought me a lot of healing and a lot of clarity. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to welcome Leah Heal, the visionary force behind HealHouz, a spiritual platform that is dedicated to helping individuals deepen their spiritual awareness and awaken their multidimensional potential. Leah is a lifelong seeker of universal truths, a devoted practitioner of the mystical arts, and someone who beautifully blends grounded compassion with just the most gorgeous cosmic light, and with a rich background in nursing, particularly in the elder care sector and facilitating afterlife transitions. Her work is steeped in both deep empathy and just the most gorgeous beautiful spiritual wisdom. Leah creates sanctuaries, spaces that honors the ancient goddess tradition while offering modern pathways to transformation. And today we'll be talking about Leah's incredible book, Unlock the Power of Your Shadow, which is the most amazing guide. It's a really transformational read. It takes you on a real deep dive into shadow integration, using, like, looking through the lens, if you like, of Hindu goddess archetypes, past life healing, emotional intelligence, and parallel realities. It's a really honest, quite mystical, but fiercely empowering read. And if you've ever wondered how past lives, soul memories, hidden parts of the self shape our current experience, or you're simply ready to explore the edges of your consciousness, this is an episode for you. And we're going to be diving into the book. We're going to be talking about this multidimensional journey that it takes you on, and I'm hoping that we'll get some time to unpack it all. Leah might have to come back and do a few of these episodes. Leah's work is so deeply aligned with the kind of past life exploration that is really multisensory. It's really interactive, and it's really designed for healing trauma, breaking those old patterns that are not serving you, reconnecting you with your soul's deeper wisdom. Whether you're a trainee in hypnosis, whether you are a clinical hypnotherapist, whether you're just simply curious or actively seeking to find something that resonates with you for your healing journey, I am going to promise you that today's conversation is going to open doors to aspects of yourself that you potentially may have forgotten or may have ever even thought about or known about. This episode is going to be fantastic. So grab a cuppa, get your journals out, grab a cozy blanket, because it's going to be a really beautiful soul deep journey and you don't want to miss. Welcome to Hypnogeeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda.
John.
Thank you. I'm flattered and thrilled to be here with you and the Northern College of Clinical Hypnotherapy.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I can't wait to share this episode with people. It's going to be just so amazing. In your beautiful book, Unlock the Power of Your Shadow, Transform Your Current Past Lives and Parallel Lives, it's all about embracing your authentic self, your powerful authentic self. And it includes working with goddess archetypes. It is a really fantastic guidebook for anyone who is feeling drawn to working with the feminine and shadow work. At the beginning of your book, you do share quite a deeply personal story that introduces this spiritual lens to shadow work, that was sort of guided by the goddess archetypes. Can you give me a little really big one, a little summary of your story and the journey that you've been on in creating this amazing guide?
Well, I have always seen, I believe, multi-dimensions, and seen slices of this lifetime, of other lifetimes, and dimensionally and interdimensionally ever since I was young. And my difficulty was in not knowing that other people didn't see this. So I had to learn and understand that what I was seeing was not what other people were seeing.
Yeah.
And that was my difficulty when I was young. And I would say things or do things awkwardly, which just came naturally, but were not necessarily well received by the people around me, because they weren't seeing or experiencing the same thing. So that was probably the most difficult thing was really feeling uh, almost removed from life, because I was experiencing another life in my own little world.
Yeah, yeah. So a feeling of being awkward, not fitting in that whole kind of square peg in a round hole, and having these, I'm going to call them gifts because I really believe they are gifts,
Yeah.
are not understood, and not well received. So tell me a little bit more about the your personal transformation that you went through, that kind of that changed that perspective for you.
Um, I think one of the times that it really hit me that I was experiencing something different than other people around me was when I was in my teen years. I toured Europe,
Right.
and I was actually in England in a very small town. I don't even remember where it was. And as a small tour group, with other teens and some leaders, we walked into a stone church that was about 1,000 years old. And I remember the leaders telling us about this church. And I walked in and I felt dizzy and I felt nauseated and I
Mm.
smelled incense and I heard chanting. And I had this overwhelming sensation of entering into the sacred. And I immediately turned around and came out of the church. And I I said, I can't go back in there. That we're not supposed to be just touring and walking through and gawking at the, you know, at the paintings or what would the ceiling look like or whatever. And the leader said to me, "You're not going to go back in." And I said, "No, that's a sacred space." And I was the only one who would not stay and for that tour of that church. I sat outside in some reverent state, feeling like I had encountered some force of the divine. Now at the time I couldn't put it into words. I was young. I didn't have the vocabulary. But that's really when I realized, oh, I'm experiencing something different than everybody else.
Quite a strong sense of the sacred, quite a strong sense of entering into that sort of altered dimension, almost like a need to demonstrate respect for that kind of
Right.
place that you were going into as well. Do you think that it was that experience, that initial experience, that brought certain emotions or experiences, some suppressed parts of yourself that kind of came to the surface? Was that kind of your beginning into the past life work, and was that what sort of brought you to the shadow work as well, do you think?
Well, it was I had already gone through some sort of spiritual awakening. Prior to that, I had been in a parochial boarding school, which means a religious boarding school, quite religious. And although I wasn't of that religion, I know it's going to sound cuckoo, but I had this full immersion baptism in
Mhm.
a full baptistry, a bath of water. And when I and of course they wanted to baptize me because I wasn't of the religion. So they wanted to make sure that I got the full feeling of where I was
Yeah.
at. And when I came up out of the water, I truly experienced some sacred, powerful, transformative force. And if I hadn't have experienced it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. Because when I was a baby, I had been sprinkled in the traditional baptism and done all of that. But this was powerful. And on the heels of that, I had learned about, and I'm in my young teens, I had learned that there was a convent near where this parochial boarding school was at. And I had even thought to myself, when I get out of high school, I'm just going to join the convent. And that was my thought until, of course, I got my driver's license and, stopped going to that school after a couple of years and started being a normal teenager and stuff. But I had already had these, shadows of all of this. And then later, as in my early 20s, when I started really doing some past life, my own, I guess you could say, hypnotherapy or meditations, I saw so many lifetimes in a religious, formal religious settings. And I was like, well, no wonder, no wonder. And then I started, when I would see these things in other people, or these quote unquote past lives or parallel lives, or whatever the energy was they were bringing into their current space or their current life dimension, on this physical plane, I just naturally was attracted to them and would say, oh, well, I see this, or, do you want me to share with you what I see? And back in the day, you got to remember, this stuff was, we're going back to the 80s. This was very taboo. Everything. Very. I remember saying the word meditation, and there were certain groups of people that looked at me like I was the devil.
It can really resonate with what you're saying, because I was brought up in a really like a Pentecostal born again Christian church. We didn't have christenings, we had dedications where everyone in the church promises to they take a vow to care for you and to guide you to become a Christian, and then when you get to a certain age you get to choose for yourself, and I had a full immersion baptism as well, and it's interesting for me. I definitely felt a sense of something changing within me as well, like a sense of renewal. At the time, well, I would call that the Holy Spirit. That's my understanding of it. Like it's a baptism in water, but for me, it's a baptism in a sense, like a sense of the Holy Spirit as well. And it's a physical act of inviting the Holy Spirit into your life to guide you. And I do feel like since then I've had this kind of little inner guidance, like an inner wisdom that I can sit with and chat with and get guidance from. That might be my higher self, but it certainly feels like Holy Spirit to me. But I love how you talk about it as an awakening. That full immersion was an awakening, but a real connection with the sacred for you. And then this is that sort of led for you to sort of seeing things and experiencing things. What was it that you were seeing, and what would you describe that sacred awakening as? It's a little bit of a double question there.
I called it my sparkles. Like literally, it just sparkly energy. My sparkles. And I have to believe it is the unconditional love of the ethers, and with a lot more mixed into it. But it's real, and it's dimensional, and it's personal, and it's intimate. And now, mind you, I'm not saying that everything was, rainbows and butterflies after this, because if you have an experience like that, and then, of course, we're going back many, many years, and then everybody around you, for the most part, is saying, okay, that's great. We know that there's this thing called the gifts of the spirit.
Yeah.
But, what you're doing, we don't accept.
Yeah.
Difficult. The laying on of hands and the healing and the speaking in tongues and the, seeing past lives or, parallel dimension. So basically I was told, oh, that's wonderful. And you're wrong to be doing that. Something is wrong with you. And that's quite a dichotomy, because then I'm killing my old myself, myself that was behaving this way, killing that person and saying something is wrong with you. And then I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not doing anything wrong, but everybody's telling me it's wrong. It's very confusing.
Yeah, that's a lot of trauma right there, isn't it? There's some really different experiences. Like, we want you to believe this, and we want you to, and you're believing it and feeling it and experiencing it, but the stuff that you're experiencing along with it that feel beautiful and sparkly and light and bring healing and joy, we're not going to acknowledge those bits. We don't like those bits. We're going to kind of chop these bits off, and it can feel a little bit like, you're having bits of you have to be removed, or bits of you have to be amputated or hidden, because it's not quite in alignment with what we believe. I guess that was the challenge for you right there.
Right. That's great, but don't do it. I mean, don't live magically. Don't express yourself multidimensionally. Don't put this in front of our face. We just want to talk about it, but don't do it.
Yeah,
that was the message. Come away closer,
Yeah, I always used to say to my friends, well, Jesus was a hypnotherapist, because he laid on hands, he did healing, and he spoke in metaphor so that you could communicate powerful messages to the subconscious. Like, I'm just walking in his footsteps, and I'm up for anointing in oil as well. So I'm all about that. But it is really difficult, isn't it? You spoke about how you had this desire to live more magically. I want to know more about how your goddess archetype serves as a framework for that. But tell me a bit more about living magically for you.
Well, I like to allow myself to indulge in more than just this reality. And the magical part of life for me is allowing these other parts of myself to be awake and incorporated into my being. And of course, over the years, that's included some very dark aspects. And then some, of course, very light and wonderful ones. But I realized if I shut myself down, the sparkles went away. So if I wanted to live with the sparkles and the magical feeling and hearing, angels sing and, hearing my guides speak to me and things like that, I could not shut myself down. I could not repress parts of myself, even the most ugliest or the most painful parts. And that's probably what propelled me into doing shadow work. But that term actually is relatively new to me. I never called it shadow work. I just called it doing the work.
Yeah.
I didn't even put the shadow name onto it. To me, that is a new incarnation, if you will, of, and I'm glad for it, because it's brought it into the consciousness.
Yes.
It's given it a label.
Yeah.
But for me, that's relatively new. It was just doing the work and incorporating parts of myself, or helping other people incorporate parts of themselves. And that was that was the only reference there was.
Yes, I mean, my experience of shadow work is very much rooted in Jung's work, and I just when we're working in therapeutic setting, We're wanting people to acknowledge and accept all of themselves, all of their realities, all of their dimensions, all of the parts of themselves, all of the different religious communities,
Yeah.
experiences that they've had, all of their family dynamics, the good stuff and the dark stuff, the tough stuff and the joyful stuff. It's really the shadow work, I think, is about that full acceptance. And what I love about the past life work within that is like for me, if you don't know yourself before the age of 15, if you've got no memory of your childhood, as a
Mm-hmm.
25-year-old or a 30-year-old person, do you really know yourself, and can you really accept yourself, and do you really know why you react and respond to certain things, and do you know why you're drawn to things, or challenged in areas, or feel passionate about some things and not others? So for me, this is the shadow work is the work of knowing yourself and understanding yourself. How do you feel that early family dynamics and past life influences as well, how do you feel that they shape parts of yourself, and perhaps suppress or hide other parts as well? How do you think that has an impact on you?
Well, I mean, I believe it has a profound impact, first of all.
Mm.
Um, Early childhood experiences are, they can be great and they can be brutal. One thing, because I'm old, I have a little bit of hindsight. And one thing that I've really come to realize is that since my mother's passing, her spirit was with me for about 2 years solid, during her passing or after she had passed. And she gave me the opportunity to see life through her eyes. In other words, after her passing, she gave me the answers to all the crazy that I grew up with. Because a child goes through an experience, they grow up and they go, why did that happen? How did that happen? Where did that come from? Why was I a part of this experience? What drew me into that? How do I feel about that? Well, I believe childhood experiences go way, way deeper than just what a person is experiencing in the lifetime of the child. I believe they go into not only your past lives, but the past lives of the parents, the lineage of the family, the experience, I'm going to say sins of the foremothers and forefathers, the lineage line. I believe it's far more convoluted and complex than we may even realize.
Yeah. So as a child in that family setting, with it, with all the dynamics at play, that child is bringing with it its ancestral lineage. It's bringing with it all of its past life experiences, but so is everybody else in that family as
Yeah.
well. And every interaction and connection is some kind of a reflection or a mirror or a manifestation of all of those life experiences. That is complex.
It is complex. And so, if
Mind blown.
right. And so if you're looking at a person and their childhood trauma, that thread may be able to be unraveled in a very intricate way. And it may be much, much more than, my mom washed my mouth out with a bar of soap when I was 7 and I'm still traumatized. It may be as simple as that,
Yeah.
but it may be
Yeah.
far more convoluted than that.
Yeah.
It may have been something that was done to the parent, and then that led on to something else and something else. And so my mother's passing gave me a much deeper insight. As she was sharing it was like her reality was layered on top of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was seeing through her eyes, and she was giving me a running dialogue of what in her life brought her to behave or do a certain thing, or things turn out a certain way. It was a parallel running dialogue.
So it almost, that connection with your mum when she was in spirit almost gave you like a different view or a new
Yes.
perspective of
Yes.
how time works. I've written time, spirit, non-linear. I've written, I know I'm trying to, as I'm asking you questions. I think I have some. I've spoken to a number of people about these kinds of topics, and people have said to me, "How does it work then? If when we die, we are then reincarnated and we move into a new plane of existence or a new life." Or we come back as somebody else, or we incarnate as a part of a soul family, and then there's a concept of life between lives, world between worlds, where we can go and communicate with guides and Holy Spirit and other
Yeah.
dimension old beings. And then we've got this idea of spirit. Well, if you're in spirit, where are you? Are you in a light? Are you in a different universe? Are you in a different dimension? And for me, it's this idea of my brain works in linear. It starts at the beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end. And what I really got excited about when I was learning clinical hypnotherapy years ago now was that when you're in trance, when you're in that state of hypnosis, there's no concept of time. What's an hour and a half can feel like about 2-3 minutes, and you kind of go, really, have I been in hypnosis that long? Have I been doing that amount of work? Where has time gone? And it's almost we go within ourselves, we connect to something deep within us, and time just seems to disappear. So it became easier for me to understand that time isn't, maybe in different dimensions, but it's certainly not linear. Talk to
Yeah.
me about how you see, what your perspective is of what is time. Talk to me about it, because there's a lot of questions in there. I'm sorry. Multi-dimensional questions.
I love it. Well, I guess, what can I say? What you just described, Amanda, as far as what clinical hypnotherapy has taught you and the experience of being clinically uh, in a hypnotherapy session,
Mhm.
um, I experience in my fully conscious awakening state.
Yes. Like time is just an illusion, like a construct.
Right, right. It's very slippery.
Yeah.
It's very, very slippery. And I will also tell you that uh, a few years ago, I have had clinical hypnotherapy
Mm.
at least a dozen times, and it been through that. And I had a friend of mine. She did a session on me, and she said, "Oh, Leah, you slipped into the deepest state so easily and so quickly." And she went on to, this is years later. And then she went on to tell me, and, don't you remember this? And don't you remember that? And what about this? And what about that? And I said, I don't remember anything. I don't, I hardly remember any of it.
Mhm.
Now, for her, she remembers so many details. So I'm asking myself, was I so deep into it and I left it there because I had closure and I came back so I could just let it go and be me? And I think that that's what I did. But I promise you that wherever I was at in that timeline while I was under the hypnotherapy session, I did come to completion with it, and that realm was real, and I was able to put peace with it and then come back, and I no longer had that burden with me, and it freed me to even be more engaged in this life of Leah in this dimension.
Wow. So going inward and going into that trance space state for you, there was no conscious memory, which is something that does happen. Particularly if you go quite deep, and so you don't need to remember everything, so it's not an issue. And sometimes I think your subconscious chooses what it wants you to remember, and sometimes the therapist will guide you to particularly bring something to the conscious realm because it's a nugget of something useful. And it is definitely, I love what you said about it being this kind of really, whatever you completed in there, you did that work. It didn't need to be brought, but there was something that really happened for you in that space, because time here does seem like an illusion. It does seem like an illusion, and time is kind of fluid. But talk to me, if time is fluid, then where are we going when we're communicating with spirit, and where are we going when we die?
Maybe there's two sets of runways. Maybe one runway takes us to something, and one runway brings something to us. In other words, what I'm seeing is that it's even more convoluted or dynamic than that. That things and beings and spirits and realms can come to us, and we can go to them. So where do we go in spirit? Did we go somewhere in spirit, or did spirit come to us? So that, I believe that could be two separate things.
Yeah.
And then when we die, I can only really talk about my own experiences of death and remembering death in previous lifetimes, and my experiences of communicating with people who are dying or dead. Okay, I can only reference that. But I believe there are a lot of dimensions where our consciousness exists after death. But the one thing I am very sure of is that wherever we are and wherever we go and wherever our consciousness is experiencing, we still exist.
Yeah.
We still exist, and we are probably in a fuller state of awareness than we are in this dimension, although maybe not. You can go places where you're not. But we still exist because we keep coming back and incarnating into this dimension or other dimensions. So I am confident that we don't just poof into a cloud of smoke and evaporate. We may poof, but we go somewhere. We take ourselves, multiple selves with us, and exist within usually a greater awareness of oneness with source and all.
Yeah, the idea of having multiple selves really makes sense to me, with, you know, the concept of every experience that we have in our life, in our past lives, in our existence, creates a part of us. It creates a program that's going to run. It creates another dimension of us. So I like that work of cells, and perhaps we exist to do the work. Maybe that's what we're here for. Maybe we're meant to experience as much as we possible, or we have a particular journey that we're going on and to complete certain task. We're on a mission. I like to think we're on a mission to have all of these amazing experiences. I do feel like I'm in this body to have the experience of being in this body. But being in this body, I'm a woman, and we were talking, weren't we, about how I was just saying to you before we started recording that I sometimes feel a bit like I'm watching an episode of Handmaid's Tale when I put the TV on nowadays, with all of the shadow stuff that really seems to be coming up around women's health, about women's rights, about women's choices, about, things that I thought we'd sorted out in the 60s and the 70s
Yeah.
seems to be really coming back, and maybe it was unfinished work, maybe there's more work needs to be done. But I'm really fascinated to know more about the goddess archetypes that you use, because I don't know too much about the Hindu goddess archetypes, and I think that's an area that you draw upon as a reflection, or as a dimension of the work that you offer. Tell me a little bit more about the goddess archetypes, and what are they, and how do they serve as a framework for this work that you do?
Well, I'll share with you why I wanted to bring in the goddess archetypes into uh, my reference to shadow work and in the book. And the reason is the only thing, the only reference to shadow work that I have seen is within the Jungian archetypes, which
Yes.
I have great respect for clinical psychology, for Jung, and for other great masters that have deciphered the psyche or given us a roadmap to the psyche. But I must say, I'm prejudiced toward the goddess, toward the feminine. I didn't want to be referencing to something that a man had created.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, I have my own little construct of reality, and I've always been very comfortable in the feminine and in the divine feminine. And here in America, at the current time, we don't consciously embrace the divine feminine or reference to feminine archetypes. We have three, we have definitely two, Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, the
Yeah,
Madonna and the whore. That's
yeah,
pretty much the limit. I assure you there is much more in between there than just those two extremes.
yeah.
Um,
I think
so,
really interesting, because that's what women are put into in conversation. When we're insulting women, when we're hurting women, when we're shouting at women, when we're repressing women, it's all about the whore, isn't it? It's all about
oh, yeah.
and when we're
Yeah.
adoring women and when we're elevating women, it's very much about the mother, and
Yeah.
none of the other stuff in between is spoken about. It certainly doesn't seem to be very respected, and there's a lot of disempowerment, I think, that goes on with those. So that did you find that the Hindu archetypes, the fem, kind of had a
Yeah.
nice
Yes.
range of the in between that was missing?
Yes. I mean, I really had to turn to the Eastern continent, if you will, and the
Mhm.
Eastern Dharma
Yeah.
to collect what I could relate to, what felt right inside of me, what could possibly explain my my pantheon of maternal instincts and vain maiden instincts and uh, deathly
Yes.
I gave birth to you, I can kill you. things, um, I was so much more complex than just two polar opposites, right? And that's where the Eastern traditions came in. And when I started exploring that, I was like, there's thousands of Hindu goddesses or
Yes.
Eastern, of references to the women, the female archetypes. And I only reference 4 in my book, which is a very small slice, but they're maybe the most accessible. They're the most known and maybe most recognized, and they did quite well, to embody these archetypes that were being discussed in the book, or these places where we may have shadows and light. So I just really want to encourage people to do their own exploration of feminine archetypes, no matter what continent they're from, no matter what ancient tradition they're from, or where you're sourcing them. They are far more complex, and there is more information there.
I don't know too much about the archetypes. I know that in your book you reference 4. I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about those 4 in a minute. But here in the northeast of England, we have a beautiful coastal town called Whitby, and it's got a very famous abbey. I think it's famous for. I think it's Dracula is from Whitby, so it's quite famous. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it's set in the abbey on the cliffs at the top of Whitby. But actually one of the original I'm going to say bishops or the leaders of the faith at the time was actually a woman, and she was a warrior woman, and I think her name was Hilda. I hope I'm not getting any of this information wrong. Bear with me, but it's coming from memories. And I think she was saint. She was a saint in the end. Saint Hilda. Saint Hilda. I just picture this woman with the most enormous breasts and just the most big, just red hair and this fiery personality with a staff and a sword and just sharing what she feels is important and winning fights. And I thought, in history, we don't tend to talk about women in this kind of warrior, strong. And I've always been quite drawn to like stories of Vikings because of women who fight with swords. I don't know, it just appeals to me. But talk to me a bit. For me, these are metaphors and symbols, stories that we tell about, in this case, a woman who really existed, but they kind of embody qualities that are not really expressed in many of the stories and that we tell. Tell me a little bit about the characters, the goddesses that you've put in your book.
Well, Durga is Hilda. Durga is Hilda. The weapon wielding, fiery warrioress goddess. There you go.
I knew I'd like her.
There you go. The what you just said is basically an expression of Durga. And vice versa. These archetypes repeat and we embody them. That's what's so interesting. I mean, if you want to go back to classical psychology, we embody and play out these themes. Durga as the Hilda, as the warrioress, as the who's the one that rode in on the horse naked?
Yes,
Joan of Arc.
She was definitely a warrior, but I don't think she was naked. But there was definitely a naked lady that rode into
it.
And I'm trying, so I'm not going to succeed in remembering her name. We'll Google it later.
Yeah.
But she was definitely making a point.
Definitely making a point. And you can pick, you can pick, let's just, one of the other goddesses is Kali.
Yes.
Kali is, she wears a necklace of men's heads that she's decapitated around her neck. And she's, she holds a head and it's dripping blood. And that's very much the creator destroyer. Well, we have Greek uh, mythology. I can't remember the goddess that's aligned to that, but you can take pretty much any set where you've had an established society or a complex society, you can pretty much find an analogy of these archetypes everywhere. They're just archetypes. And so if you have maybe you're having difficulty, let's just play hypothetical. Mm-hmm. You're having difficulty getting pregnant. Mm-hmm. And you go into a hypnotherapy session and maybe some past life regression as well. And you as a female had to commit infanticide. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Multiple times,
which was really common, wasn't it?
Yes.
They didn't really know what else to do.
Yes.
And I think nomadic tribal people bury the child and then move on. It was very, very common. Yeah.
Well, and also we did sacrifice children and infants.
Yeah.
So that's another form of infanticide. Mm-hmm. So possibly, if that is a scenario that came up, an archetype like Kali, or the equivalent or something of that nature, and prayers to her to help heal that part, because as women, we can give life and we can take it.
So it's honoring the creator part of us, but it's also honoring the destroyer part of us as well. That's really interesting, because I feel as a woman, when I get angry about something, when I feel that extreme anger, if I see an injustice, it really fires me up, and I'm almost made to feel shame around the anger that I feel. I must take that anger, I must hide it, I must suppress it, I must not express it, I must keep it locked in. We know what happens when you lock anger in. You become a people pleaser, you get ill.
Yeah.
It causes inflammation and autoimmune conditions and all sorts of horrific things. And I do believe that a lot of medical conditions that women are experiencing, and I'm talking about women, I'm sure men as well, but that women experience because they have these big emotions that we are not permitted to express, because if we do, we are shamed, we are punished, so we repress it.
Yes. And we don't, because we're in this Western world, and I'm including England and Europe, although they probably have more connection to the goddess archetypes, because like you had said, you have some history there that we don't in America necessarily. We not only is it just blindly repressed, but we don't have the archetypes alive to even reference to it.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, we have been robbed.
Yeah.
I remember a period in my life where I was in my early 20s and I was walking in this world on this dimension saying to myself, where are the temples? Where are the temples?
Yeah.
And I had nowhere to go where I could feel the sacred and participate in the sacred. We have been robbed of our connection and alignment and remembrance of our sacred selves.
Yeah.
If you don't even have a temple
Mm.
in your society to go to even worship the goddess or
Mm.
acknowledge the goddess,
Mm-hmm.
you're a duck out of water.
Mm-hmm. 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 I
So
think it's about honoring the divine part of ourselves when we're honoring all of those dimensions. I lived in the Middle East for a little while, and I learned that I explored the frankincense trail a little bit. And what
oh
I learned was all the way along that frankincense trail, frankincense was more important than gold at points throughout
yeah,
history.
yeah.
And what I learned is that all the way along were these like cities that are empty and abandoned now, but all the
Mm-hmm.
way along this frankincense route, merchant trading route, there were these cities, and every city was full of temples, and it was like
Yeah,
you bring your own gods, bring your own goddesses, bring your own, all
yeah,
religions are welcome. These are
yeah,
sacred spaces where you can go and connect with and honor
yeah,
and be grateful for and worship
yeah.
and explore those dimensions of yourself, those reflections of you, the divine self, or if you believe it to be an external
Mm-hmm.
force. You just don't see that nowadays. You don't see welcome spaces for all to go and connect with the divine. It's very segregated and separated, and I guess that's how I feel we've been as well. We've been segregated and separated from the divine, from ourselves, from aspects of ourselves, because there are not these archetypes, these metaphors, these stories within our language, within the words that we use, within our culture.
Yes, exactly. And I have a little funny story because you had said when we were chatting before we went live on air, you had said the exact words of something that had been told to me prophetically many years ago. And I'm going to share with you. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. So it's a funny story. In one of my last attempts to be normal and
I'm laughing already.
and right and join a church community when my children were small because I wanted them to have some traditional Christian, reference and go to church and
Yeah.
have some experiences like that. So I was raising young children, and there was a wonderful church, big church, and the people were lovely. Uh, I thought, wow, this is really a group of people that my family could be a part of and get to know, and we could do the social thing and blah blah blah. So they said, yeah, we'd love to baptize you and bring you into the fold
Oh, what about
and
yeah.
and all of that.
No.
And I had yet another full water baptismal immersion, but this one was different. The whole thing about it was that when you were brought up out of the water, the pastor, head of the church, would prophesy over you. And so there would be, a lot of people present of the congregation, and that would kind of be your entree into the church and into the church family, and be brought into the fold, and you'd be accepted probably to some level. So this was a really big deal to get this
Yeah.
prophecy. So I my husband wasn't too keen on it at the time, uh, but he indulged me and was present, and my children were present, and blah blah blah. So I come up out of the water, and the pastor comes into the space right next to me and starts to prophesy. And all he could get out of his mouth was, "You're a square peg in a round hole."
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And 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 that was about all that was said.
Okay.
That was my very clear message that you're not welcome here. You
Mhm.
don't fit in. This is not going to work. It's not a fit. And I hadn't even formally met this pastor. It was such a large church. So I'm sure that when that came out of his mouth, it had shocked him as
Mm,
much as it had shocked me. And
mm,
all of my hope to be friends, that
mm,
at that point it was a no-go.
mm,
That was not something to be welcomed, and was not a fit. That was my last attempt. And I took that to heart because he didn't do anything mean. He didn't do anything wrong. He was speaking the truth,
mm,
and
mm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And I thought, Leah, you're really on your own here. You need to just walk your path and quit looking for comfort and be true to who you are.
Mm. Yeah. I think there must be an archetype for feeling discomfort in being yourself, because it is that journey of walking your own path. I'm grateful for the communities and the community that I'm involved with, and I recognise the difficulty in finding a place to worship where you can feel authentic and show up as you and not have to hide those gifts, those dimensions, those parts of you. But it can be a real discomfort. I want to talk about how you've orientated that journey by yourself, having really had that awakening to I am a square peg.
In a round hole.
I mean, like, where do you go next? Yeah.
Well, I learned that there was I learned that I could make my own altar.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that creating your own personal sacred space was something that you could do.
Yeah.
Um, and I did that. And I even got, of course, we're going back many, many years. Um, there was even criticism about that. It was almost making the sacred profane, to make it so personal and a part of your everyday life. Um, I had family members that were very uncomfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to think that there are parts of the world that, they have an altar in their home, they have an altar in their office, they
Yes,
have an altar, in their car, a mini one on the dash,
that's right. That's so
and
true.
say the blessing.
Yeah.
That is how removed we are, or have become, or have been trained in the
Mm.
Western culture.
Yeah.
So now it's not such a big deal. But, what did I do? I did one more thing that was extreme. I made my own personal altar. So be, because I've been on this journey and been around for a while, it's just been a lifetime of extremes, which fortunately now none of this is extreme. We have, our Western culture has caught up with our past, who we as human beings, divine human beings, spiritual beings having a human experience on this planet. I believe we've caught up with that. And now we're on the threshold of this platform to live, to truly live heaven on earth. Actually, Heaven is on earth. It's only us human beings that have removed it.
I absolutely love that. It's the Lord's Prayer, isn't it? On earth as it is in heaven. It is on earth. We can have heaven on
Yeah.
it is for me it's a mental state, and I think it's very much connected to what are we worshipping. We've
Yeah.
removed the divine, we've removed
Yeah.
access to altars and the sacred within our own homes because
Yeah.
it's not seen as acceptable. But what are we worshipping? We're worshipping Amazon because we're on there, we're shopping all the time. We're worshipping money because we're obsessed with it. We want more of it. We're frightened we're going to lose it. And I think science is very much something that we
Yeah.
worship as well. We believe
Yeah.
somebody says scientifically proven, and we go, oh, well, that must be true. It's the truth then. That's truth. And I think we're forgetting the truth of the divine.
Right.
We're eliminating that from us. And so I think it's useful to ask what tools are we using? What practices are we engaging with? What are we worshipping?
Right.
Obviously you've created your own altar and you create your own sacred space, but what are the practical methods that you use? So we've mentioned meditation, maybe journaling,
Yes.
even some tech-based tools that are ways
Yes.
to access and work with certainly the shadow side of you, to get to know yourself more, to see what archetypes you're expressing. But which are the shadow work tools that feel most approachable for you, and why?
Um, Taking a nap. uh,
So important, isn't it?
honest, honestly, if I am stuck on something, I go take a nap, because I'm realizing that there are parts of myself that need to communicate with myself, but I'm in the way.
Yeah.
And I will put music on of some sort of chanting, or there's music that has vibrational frequencies that's
Mm-hmm.
popular now. Um, if I'm connecting to a past life, whatever that is, it can go from Gregorian chants to uh, Krishna. It's whatever vibration is going to support me to get out of my own way, to access another part of myself, to integrate it. And I will usually just lay down and sleep. And maybe that is somehow in alignment with hypnotherapy. There's a connection there somewhere, I think, um,
Well, I think
of
that
being able to access self.
yeah, I think when we're in hypnosis, we're not actually asleep. We're more awake and more focused than we are. But what we've done is we've bypassed the critical faculty. We've bypassed the
Mm.
logical. We've bypassed the analytical, and
Mm-hmm.
we're connecting with the emotional. We're connecting with imagination. We're going inward where
Mm-hmm.
we can listen to our heart, and when we can connect. But I love that because a nap, it's restful, it's restoring, and I love how you say it gets the me bit, the noisy, logical, analytical me bit, the bit that doesn't trust, the bit that's filled with fear, the bit that's worried.
Yeah.
It gets that out of the way, and we can use beautiful tools like journaling and meditation and past
Yes.
life regression and music
Yes.
and chanting and different sounds and whatever we need to access that vibration that supports us. But it's still about going within, and it's
Yeah.
about really connecting with our our authentic self,
Yes.
and getting us out of the way. I do think we're faced, aren't we, with so many emotional triggers that shift our perspective of the world as we go along. Obviously, taking a nap is definitely the great. I interviewed a lovely gentleman a little while ago from Australia who was all about pausing. Just take a pause, and then I like pray and proceed. I think he's pause and be mindful or something like that. His little ditty that he says, but it's that idea of taking a pause and having time to reflect. And we're so busy, aren't we? We're so rushing through the world all the time. We're so
Yeah.
attached to external things. When we have these big emotional responses, reactions to what's happening, how do you kind of how would you recommend that people, except from take a nap, when you're faced with those big emotional triggers, how could you then shift your perspective to embrace it as an invitation to grow?
Ooh. Do something different.
Yeah.
Do something different. Reach out and find and access something that is new,
Mm-hmm.
something that is out of your realm of normal. If you're needing to integrate a part of you that has not been integrated, or that it is timely for it to be integrated,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're going to have to do something new.
Yeah.
Um, that that peg hole that you've been in, it's time to look at a different one, or
Mm-hmm.
reach out and plug into another one. Expand,
Mm-hmm.
bring to grow. You have to bring more of yourself into yourself, which means doing something different. So allow yourself to grow, to take that scary step of um, drive a different route, see a different surrounding. Um, Instead of taking the elevator, literally walk the stairs. Just do something different.
I love that. Yeah, integrate part of you. I've written here, integrate. How do we integrate that part of us? I think there are so many parts of us that have been hidden and shamed, and I love that we've got these guides, that the goddesses that can give us an archetype or a metaphor that represents how we may be feeling, how we may be reacting, how we're responding. It gives us the kind of yin and yang dimensions of what's happening within us. I like that there are those stories there. We might have to go look for them, but they do exist. But I think when we've experienced things in our lives and we haven't acknowledged them, or we haven't loved ourselves or enough, or we haven't seen ourselves, we haven't acknowledged ourselves or accepted ourselves, I'm hearing kind of childhood stuff,
Mm-hmm.
as children. We talk about trauma, but trauma is just, I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel heard, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel acknowledged, I didn't feel accepted, I didn't feel part of my tribe. I felt, and I guess in past lives as well, we're going to have lots of those patterns of that are being
Yeah.
repeated, where we didn't feel part of
Yeah.
our tribe, we didn't feel seen, heard, accepted, or loved. These are all parts that we need to bring forward. I loved what you said about bring more of you to yourself. And I think this is what you're doing with this work, isn't it? You are
Yeah.
going into the past lives, you're exploring who we are. And in learning about that, we're also bringing more of ourselves to ourselves, but even just using present life stuff, that inner child, that
Oh, yeah.
part of us, that inner child needs to hear those words that were not spoken, needs to be loved in the way that it wasn't loved. How do you think that reconnecting with the inner child supports spiritual and emotional healing?
Oh, um, I'll just share in my own journey.
Yeah.
Um, my my inner child, when was, I'd have to say I was 19. I think that is when I had my existential crisis and found something called this inner child.
Yeah.
Mind you, back then there was no literature, there was no nothing about all of this, at least not where I came from.
No, it
Um,
was sort of John Bradshaw, I think, that brought the inner child work to the forefront of where it is now. And it's something that's seen as parts therapy. It's seen as shadow work, isn't it?
what year was that? What that he put that out there like that?
John Bradshaw, I'm gonna make a guess and say sort of in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. I think he sort of started his work. He was doing a lot of his creating love work, and he's in a child work, and he's welcoming home the inner child. I think sort of in the 80s, maybe. That was when it was really
Yeah,
starting to be
I
spoken of.
was I was going to say, yeah, and spoken about, and really being a part of
Mhm.
the dialogue. It wasn't a part of the dialogue yet, not in regular society, but yeah,
No, no, no.
it, yes. And so when I was doing meditations, and this inner child of mine was deeply wounded, deeply depressed, deeply
Yeah.
pained. And I just found her inconsolable, really
Mm.
deeply inconsolable. And I can get emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I really, really had to put her in a, like literally, physically, put her in an environment with rainbows and unicorns,
Yeah.
and 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 communicate with her directly about how much I loved her and how valuable she was to
Mhm.
me. And but before I could even get there, I had to connect with her.
Yeah.
Um, because if she was tearful and grieving and inconsolable, of course, I had spent all of my life up to that point wanting to stay away from her, because the only way I could function was to be removed from her. So who
Mhm.
did that make me? I don't know. I can't even reflect on myself like that. I just know that when I saw her, I felt so sad that she was
Yeah.
there alone. And I did embrace her, and it was awkward because I had to reintroduce myself to myself.
Mhm.
And I did embrace her, and I did tell her that she didn't have to do anything. All she had to do was be happy.
Yeah.
And and then I would ask her, well, what do you need to be happy? Well, I need my play friends, and I need my animals, and I need things that smell good. I just had to relate to her at that little 5-year old level. I think it was when I really, where I found her to be stuck.
Yeah.
And I assured her that I will take care of you. You're safe. Coming from a 19-year-old's mind, I'm even surprised I was even sophisticated enough to do that.
Yeah.
But that was the motherhood, maybe instinct coming out of me. And we can even go on to say that was the expression of the goddess.
Yeah.
You know, she was taking care of this child. Um, if I had known about goddess archetypes at that point, it probably could have been facilitated much easier and maybe not even been an issue. But of course, back then we were so, fragmented in society as well. So I did have to do that. That that was a very painful,
Yeah.
but
So So we work with people, don't we, who've got these deep wounds, who are full of resistance, who are full of overwhelm, who've got like a really mean inner critical voice. Um, and as I was listening to you share about how you kind of did that rescue, you brought that inner child home to you. You brought that child to be more you within yourself, and did that deep healing work. I hear lots of compassion was needed there, self-compassion, compassion for that part of you, that dimension of you, and the need to connect with that part of you. Um, we need to be we need to be seen, we need to be heard, we need to be loved, we need to feel safe. And you took the mother, the goddess archetype, and you embodied that and went to that part of yourself and delivered the words and delivered the love, and you said, I see you, you said, I hear you, you said, I love you, you said, you can just be you, you're not responsible for all of this that's going on around you, you just be happy, just be you. I love that. And I think it's so important for us to do that for ourselves and then go and play out.
Yeah. Yes. That's right. That's right. Go play with the sparkles.
Let's go get the sparkles out and play out, because we're all so very serious, aren't we, all the time? And I think that we do need to see ourselves and hear ourselves and love ourselves and all of the parts of ourselves, the inner child parts of ourselves, all of the shadow parts of ourselves as well. And I love how we can take these archetypes, these and embody them to do that healing work. It's just incredible. But I do think that we also need to, is there an archetype that just goes, come on, let's go play out and sing songs and go on the swings and climb the hills and swing in the trees? I want to be.
There's got to be. I don't know who she is or he is, but there's certainly archetypes that frolic and are joyful and find the playful side. And basically, to me, it's like staking your claim to living heaven on earth. Who says you can't? You know, I'm not going to tell myself I can't. I'm going to tell myself I can. Even if I carve it out only for me, myself, and I am going to do that as best as I can.
Yeah, yeah. The work, the shadow work. It's just the work, isn't it? Because it embodies so
Yeah.
many elements, isn't it? I love that. How do you feel that if people start to explore their shadows, explore these hidden parts, these hidden dimensions of ourselves, how do you think doing this work empowers you in your life? How do you think it can help you transform, move forward?
Oh, this
What's
is
the
my
impact this work does?
this is my favorite part because I call it gathering parts of myself to be more of myself
Yeah.
and be more of myself, selves. It just goes back to me, myself, and I.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all have heard the saying, well, you create your own reality. Well, if that ultimately is true, and I'm creating this and you're creating that, then I want to do it as fully and magically and sparkly as possible. And the more of me that I have with me, the more I'm experiencing multidimensionally, and the more I'm experiencing. And I believe we really only come and incarnate into this dimension to experience
Yeah.
right, wrong, good, bad,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. this, it's been said in so many traditions.
Yeah.
This is the dimension of experience. It's where we can experience the most with the least amount of focus or the least amount of consciousness. And it is where uh, we have more to take back to source than we can in any other dimension. When we end this life and when we die. So I just want to be more of me, and I want everybody else to be more of them.
So it's like I'm inviting and I'm exploring more of me so that I can be more of me, my whole self, my wholeness in my
Yeah,
wholeness. And then when I'm being more of me, when I'm being that really whole, authentic, full self, I can then go and integrate that, walk that path in my life, being that whole self, and celebrate it.
yeah, you are intrinsically more powerful.
Yeah, I bet you are.
You're intrinsically more powerful to create the reality that you want to live
Yeah.
and experience. Um, you know, it's just the expansion of consciousness and awareness on a real literal level.
I know that when I'm feeling very me in my skin, comfortable, authentic, whole, healed, I can handle life's challenges. I
Yeah,
can handle conflicts.
yeah,
I know what I want to do. I feel better in my work, my career. Um, yeah, I feel like I can, I can take on the light and the dark
yeah,
in the world.
yeah,
When there's more of me in this space, more of authentic me in this space, I feel like I'm more in control of how I'm experiencing the world. Does that make sense?
well, yeah, because ultimately you're creating it.
Yeah.
So it's
Magic.
you're you are literally consciously creating. And you know, what is all of this spiritual or mystical teaching about? Ultimately, of any tradition and all traditions, it's about consciously creating.
Yeah. So the more we explore, the more we dig in, the more we understand ourselves, be it through connecting more with the divine, be it through exploring archetypes, be it through past life therapy, we are creating the world around us. We are the creators of
Yeah,
our world. Amazing. Magic.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like I'm just going to leave it there. I feel like drop the mic. That was just gorgeous. That was amazing. Thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you for coming and sharing about your work and what you do and your story. Yeah, really, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I've enjoyed this time with you immensely.
And you can work with Leah. She does offer one-to-one coaching. And I've got to say that, Leah, because I'm working with you, absolutely such an incredible thing to do. And you can get her book on Amazon as well. And I am going to put the links to her website and her book on the information
Okay.
attached to this podcast as well, because I'm pretty sure you're all going to want to go out and buy her book and see and learn. It's just the most amazing guide. It really is just the most amazing and beautiful guide that talks about these archetypes, and is just a brilliant guide for anyone who's a healer, anyone who's training, anyone who's wanting to work in this kind of spiritual development area, anyone who is working in that more esoteric healing holistic work, anyone who's just interested. Definitely go get yourself a copy. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Thank you, Leah, for coming on today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thanks for listening.